Well, hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host, Raider. And tonight, I'd like to wish everybody that is watching, all 40 of you, 44 of you, um, you know, a happy Sunday. And I'm sorry that we got delayed. It was just, migraine day. It happens. Yeah, and the audio does sound good. So I figured out what happened. Basically, I do have this outdated webcam attached to the computer type scenario. And what was happening was it was actually overwriting somehow to where on my main, when my software would do the recording, it would take my webcam as the audio, and for some reason it was just glitching. So I ended up just unplugging the webcam, and yeah, we're all better now. We're fixed all better. We got the technology all figured out up here at Raider HQ. We know what we're doing. Okay. So we know what we're doing. We're all educated. We know some things. I've been around the block. So anyway, I'd like to thank you all for taking your hard-earned time and listening to me just ramble on about things. So what's going on? What is everybody doing? Oh, let me show the chat in the thing so that way. I guess new news. I made MCM a moderator, so you have been warned. Mom always said life's like a box of chocolates. I don't know. That's why Lieutenant Dan always got me. So what do we want to talk about tonight? What is the stronger argument? I'll just answer questions up front here. So, hello, Raider. What is the stronger argument? Left hip secondary to right hip, or secondary to both knees at 40%? Recently granted 20% hip abduction away. Have knees rated for about 2 years. I'm going to say left hip secondary to right hip, just because I wouldn't even talk about your knees ever again. I wouldn't talk about those knees ever again. That's just me. I resemble those remarks. And it is true. I have actually talked to MCM on the phone. So it is true. Her Southern accent put me on guard. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So that's about and it's just, Flynn, it's not based upon, so my answer is not based upon anything other than the fear of raising the 40% for the patellofemoral pain syndrome to issue. That's why I'm choosing the hips over the knees, and not because of anything medical. Okay. So let's go ahead and hide that one. Jason, just tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. It's going to be an assembly line. If you try to plan for it, then you're going to basically send yourself into an anxiety attack. Just basically give examples of what's wrong with it. If you want to, you can review the 38 CFR Part 4 and kind of learn what's going to be on the test. But yeah, you're going to have to go there no matter what. Even when evidence is submitted to VBMS, can you see the file name or just the file type? Okay, so I said this in this video that I put out today, the one that didn't have sound, but then I redid it and had sound. So VBMS has a lot of little columns that you can apply to it. By default, the evidence file name is not selected. So the VSR and Raider will never see what file name you assigned it at all, unless they go in and manually check that box. But there is no reason under earth and under heaven as to why anybody should check the box to see what the file name originally was. It will actually default to whatever the VBMS system assigns it. Sometimes it can be assigned unknown. So please keep that in mind. Do buddy statements help in this case or not really? They do help, actually. But remember, Buddy Light, In order for a buddy statement to be considered probative to prove or disprove a matter at issue, you have to have the buddy submit evidence that they were at the same location at the same time as you to give their statements validity. If I, as a veteran myself, say, hey, John over here saw all this stuff. How do you know, in just your deductive reasoning, how do you know that John was ever served with me at the same place at the same time to even have the opinion that they have? So you have to really honestly have them submit that evidence. Will filing this claim open the door for potential reduction in my already service-connected disabilities PTSD? What the? I think I missed something. Okay, there's part two. Okay, so part one on this. Thoughts on this? I am currently combined rated 90% for PTSD, right knee sprain, so-and-so. I have a diagnosis for OSA. Let me find part two on this one. You guys are going to get me. I have a nexus letter for OSA secondary to knee sprain. How? Okay, intermediate step of weight gain. Okay, guys, words matter. So the first thing, that's what this stream is going to talk about, is how you describe things matters. And it matters more than you know. So what you're claiming is OSA secondary to weight gain caused by knee sprain and inability to exercise. This right here, okay, I'm not picking on you in any way, shape, or form, but this is what we call, like, this is crossing the streams. You remember Ghostbusters and they said never cross the streams? Never cross theories for service connection, ever. You've got secondary due to the intermediate step to weight gain. You've got Terra due to burn pits. And then you've got secondary to allergic rhinitis that has nothing to do with weight gain. You are going to make it to where that examiner cannot, in any context, come to an actual decision as to what could have reasonably caused it. You have to pick one of these and go with it. You have 3 different theories here. 3 of them. This is bad. This is what I would consider, and it's not your bad. You don't know, and it's fine. But this is bad from a rating perspective. Because even if, right, like, and I'm going to take some time with this question. Even if the examiner says, all 3 of these are the potential cause of your service connection of your OSA, then that's a conflicting evidence, because they all didn't manifest at the same time. So something clearly caused them, and 2 other things clearly didn't cause them, because they had 3 separate onsets. So you need to be mindful of this. This is something that the claims companies do. That the DBQ places that fill out DBQs, they'll do this oftentimes. Okay. And you've got to be very, very cognizant of this. That the rater will this is red flag central. Okay. You can't have multiple theories for things that caused it. Well, because only one of the 3 is true. And the other 2 are working against the one that could be true. Truest, we'll say. So please be mindful of this. Low. Morale is low. But please be mindful of this. This is not something you have to do one at a time. One at a time. And if you do multiples like this all at the same time, it will not have a favorable outcome. Let me find the third one here. Will filing this claim open the door to potential reductions in my already service-connected disabilities? Probably not. It depends on how you word them. But it's definitely claiming it this way will cause you to not win OSA. Because you're bringing reasonable doubt with you when you claim it. Because you make it to where there's 3 different ways it could go, and the examiner can never get to a 50% degree of certainty in any direction, because There's reasonable doubt in all direction. Hey, Army Gen Mech, how you doing? So now I've skipped a few questions just to try to get to this. So, you're welcome. I just, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you that the Lieutenant Dan situation, I mean, that nearly gave me a stroke. It would be like, finding anyone on the street and giving them absolute authority to weigh in on a topic that they are not authorized, that they shouldn't be authorized to weigh in on, and then having the most powerful people on the planet go, you know what? I think you got something there. And how alarming that should be to everybody. Um, I am feeling better, Jason. Thank you so much. Let me go up here. I might have missed some people. If I did, I am sorry, but I'm going to move on from here down. Okay, received 20% for left shoulder. Okay, that's the minimum rating decision for the shoulder. Decision stated impairment of / with AC joint strains. Only claimed left shoulder. Is bilateral and inferred claim for both shoulders being strained? Yes. Well, I mean, it definitely will say, okay, so I have a lot of limited information here. It sounds like your left shoulder and your right shoulder were diagnosed. So, at minimum, you have a diagnosis for your right shoulder potentially for the bilateral condition being inferred. Whether or not it could be service connected, that's much harder because it's going to depend on whether or not you have, what theory could you apply, direct, secondary, and how much evidence you have to support it. So if there was enough to grant, they would have inferred it and granted it. So I don't know. I haven't tried Gamma Core because I know what causes my current migraines, and it's manageable through other means. And Gamma Core doesn't really touch it. I mean, whenever I get a migraine, I'm getting a migraine. But thank you. Hello, Raider, my old friend. What is the stroke? Okay, I already answered this one. Never mind. Having a stroke. I have 25 exams next. Yeah, I already answered that one too. I already answered this one, but yes, they do. They actually do. They do. They do. They do. As long as you can prove the buddy was there at the same place at the same time, buddy letters help a lot in your case. I'm confused about how the VA denied a secondary without an exam. Higher level review was also denied. Do you have a current diagnosis? If you don't have a current diagnosis, then they are not going to go through the motions. You have a minimum requirement in order to get an exam. And that she moves light. First thing I do is check. I want to see everything. So I go to a VSO that has access to VBMS, and it gives me a pet peeve to have to say that every single time. That should be a universal truth that every single VSO has access to VBMS. But I guess it's not true. So find somebody that has access to VBMS. Check the exam review. Make sure all your evidence was given to the examiner. Double check the actual medical opinion that was done and see what words were used in there. Raters are fallible. They can sometimes misread things. Let's see here. I definitely believe Gamma Core. Okay, I mean, yeah, Gamma Core is cool. It's not cool for me, but it's cool. Again, just reading via CC since the family wants to watch something. together on the TV. Well, that's good. I mean, I like that. That's cool. Um, no shame in that game right there. Hanging out with the family is also awesome. Uh, obviously, I'm streaming on a different day, so you do what you must. I don't expect many people to show up today, but I'm happy for those that do. I sent you an email regarding a response to a question you provided. Hopefully, I sent it to the right email. My email is destroyed currently. I'm just going to be honest with you on that. John, I had 2 CMP exams, mental health and TBI, residuals for increased TBI and SMCT. Why would they schedule me for an ACE exam? ACE exam not to be used for TBI. So why then? That is a very good question. And I would watch that like a hawk, John, because I want to know, because we have this thing called internal medical opinions. Well, we have in-house exams that we can do if we really need to ask a medical opinion for something that doesn't require a medical opinion. We could do an in-house exam, and I don't understand why they're not doing an in-house, but that's just me. No current updates, YouTube, on any of the changes to mental health, sleep apnea, TBI, or anything of the like. No updates currently. Yeah, lease agreement would be fine. That's fine. Just to show that they were at the same place at the same time. That helps. Yes, true. Buddy light. That would be sufficient. Because it's showing that you took effort to prove that they were there. Jason Ingalls. Okay. It seems like the VA is really moving fast. Just filed a first claim October 19th and already scheduled for 25 exams. That's typical. I mean, the scheduling of exams is fine, but it's how long it takes to get them done, go through their QA process, and it depends on what type of claim you're doing. If you are doing a BDD claim or a Gen Med claim, those are typically some of the fastest claims you can humanly get because they require the least amount of evidence. DTA error, RTC says DTA error, uploaded requested medical evidence. Manual says DTA errors get expedited. Does that happen? No. Duty to assist errors do not get expedited. They're done when they're done, and they're seen by whoever they're seen by. And, it takes as long as it takes. I've never changed the way that I do any kind of claim based upon it being a duty to assist error versus a normal claim. The actions are going to take as long as they take. So, I know you got that kind of frothing at the mouth to get it fixed, but it's going to take as long as it takes, unfortunately. Do you know how long the accredited claims agent process takes? I don't, honestly. I guess the longest period of time, because I do know somebody that has applied for it, and I'm kind of watching the way that it's working for them like a hawk because I want to do it upon retirement. You have to wait. Yeah. Have you sent an email? Have you sent an email to the site? Because I'm getting kind of weirded out by the fact that they don't even seem to be processing anybody for the accredited claims agent at this time. Jimmy John. What if I never had a med or dental eval when I ETS'd out from another country? They told me I would have to stay in country another 3 to 4 weeks for a medical eval. Any considerations by raters? No, 0% considerations, because the absence of evidence is not evidence. So here's the trick. They prey upon your desire to want to go home, and they want to cut corners to doing the right thing. And this is not, Jimmy, I'm not attacking you in any way, shape, or form on this, but I'm telling you, if somebody tells you, hey, look, you can either say the truth and wait 3 to 4 more weeks, or you can lie and get out early, stay the 3 to 4 weeks. Consider it like a vacation. Do the 3 to 4 week. I wouldn't care. Hey guys, you're going to make everyone stay 3 to 4 weeks, or you can lie and then we can get no evidence for you, or you can tell the truth and stay 3 to 4 weeks. Then I'm like, guys, you better have packed a lot of underwear and socks because we're all staying 3 to 4 weeks. I will not be denied my claim. And this goes for you guys on that are in service, that should you watch this, you tell everybody. I'd be up front. I'd be like, look, guys, you can whatever you want to do. You can call me Blue Falcon, you can do whatever, but I'm going to do the right thing and I'm going to stay that 3 to 4 extra weeks for the medical eval. Because an absence of evidence is not evidence. I can't make stuff up. We can't pretend like you went through the medical eval. And I'm sorry for that, but yeah, you should have stayed and waited the 3 to 4 weeks. That's the advice that I'm going to give everybody, is you're going to have to do the hard thing and you're going to have to wait the 3 to 4 weeks. And it sucks. Hey, Utsupi. How you doing? I've been watching for the manual updates and they have not started again. But Jimmy, John, I'm sorry. I know that that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but there's nothing that we can do. We can't go back in time and reinvent the evidence, unfortunately. Tom and Jonah? Okay. Sorry. Reading's hard. Question. PTSD appealed to BVA. Still waiting. Have sleep apnea. Should I claim sleep apnea secondary to PTSD now because of upcoming essay changes, or wait for the appeal to resolve? Okay. So, sorry. Utsupi. I know I'm trying not to make fun of your name, but it reminds me of Japanese. Utsu. So on this one, Tom, what I'm going to say, and this is going to be, the VA does not like to deal with cross-platform claims. So the PTSD will take as long as it takes. If the PTSD is the primary condition and it is not service connected at this time, then you should wait on your sleep apnea and use an in case of emergency break glass type situation. You should wait until the day before the changes go in and file a claim for sleep apnea, and then you roll the dice. Because as long as you have a diagnosis of sleep apnea, and as long as the sleep apnea claim is filed before the changes go into effect, then you can get the historical rating. So, that's about all I got on that one. Okay, so I'm going to take a pause here for the questions for a minute. And I want to kind of talk about something else. I want to talk about a couple of congressional bills. Senate bills and congressional bills. Now, this website right here, let me move this banner. Legiscan is where I go to review bills that matter to me, that make sense to me, that concern me. Okay. And I have a couple of them that I'm a little concerned about. So the first one is Senate Bill US SB 3000. Now, this was introduced on 10/9 of 2025. And I forget who introduced it, but it's an open bill right now. Now, why do I care about this Senate bill? Well, the reason why I care about Senate bills around this time is because we're looking for fraud. And this has to do with disability benefits questionnaire fraud. So, we're going to review this together because this is important, guys. I think they should prescribe us marijuana, Sherry. I think I don't smoke marijuana, but I think halfway through this process, somebody should be on it. Oh, hold on. Dogs are all over the place, but So, what's this bill about? This bill is currently about going through and punishing fraud in private DBQs. That's what this is about. So, we're going to carry out actions to identify fraudulent activity relating to the submittal of DBQs, disability benefits questionnaires, data to the secretary without regard to the origin of the questionnaire. So basically, what I'm like in my drunk history way of reviewing this, we're looking at having OIG starting to police private DBQs. And I'm halfway on the fence about this. Like, I'm not a fan of this because I see this being a chilling effect on the private DBQs. And I love private DBQs. I think like private DBQs being completed by my doctor should be easier to do and not policed to the point that my doctor doesn't want to do one because they're scared OIG will come after them. Now, I understand what they're going for here is they're going for these private DBQ companies and the potential for there being, like the what was that legal case that's come up against the claim company? I forget which one is it. I don't want to say a name because if I'm wrong, then they will probably smite me into the ground with all their money. But because they had built in private DBQs and it was bad. So they want to establish a process for claim processors in the department to identify instances of disability benefit questionnaire fraud and to transmit reports of suspected fraud as described in paragraph 2 to whomever. Now, this is where they lost me because what the FALA law are claims processors who have no functional understanding of the medical process. How are they? What determining factors are the claims processors going to use to determine that your private DBQ is fraudulent or not? And how legitimate is that going to be? Not very. You're going to have Steve, who is just an average Joe like you and me, and they're going to go, well, you know what? I think that they didn't actually do the ganometer right. So, this is going to be fraudulent. Like, what we've had enough instances where legitimate private DBQs have been denied for fraud for the most outlandish reasons. This bill just gives and I call them junior detectives. This is where VSRs and raiders who want to be junior detectives and they want to find all the fraud because they're the last line of defense for fraud. This is just going to embolden them to not focus on doing their job and focus more on gatekeeping fraud. So if this bill should pass, I have genuine concerns about that. I have genuine concerns about the staff's ability to identify fraud. It's not their job. It's not their lane. How are they going to identify fraud? We already have the 100-mile rule where, well, the VA can send me for over 100 miles to a provider, but if I go see a provider over 100 miles away, then that's fraud, air quotes. I don't know. Makes no sense to me. But I just see with the way that this is worded that we're going to come up with a process. But what process can you come up with that the layperson can identify fraud? It will have literally nothing to do with the medical evidence provided. So we're going to deny the veteran's medical evidence based upon things that have nothing to do with the medical evidence. Seems not appropriate to me. So they're going to do recurrent audits for disability benefits questionnaires submitted to the VA secretary without regard to the origin of the questionnaire. So I don't know if this is for, it would be a hoot if this was also for VA examinations and also private DBQs. It would be a hoot. I would laugh because do you know who gets the who abuses their authority more times that I see than private DBQs are nurse practitioners who work for the VA vendors and for the VA itself, where they will come up with, no, I don't think it's at least as likely as not, hashtag because, and they're insufficient. Like their examinations are insufficient. And there's no recourse for these individuals when they do something false, they do something wrong. There's no recourse towards them other than to potentially get a hand spank by MDEO. But I don't like this bill at all because it says one thing, but it's not doing the thing it's supposed to do. Now here's the limitation, and I like the limitation that the secretary may not reopen or change a decision of the department regarding an application from an individual for a claim, yada, yada, yada. So basically, if you I might be reading this wrong. If you do a private DBQ, they can't reopen a claim based upon this audit that they're going to do to the VA secretary for your for your private DBQ. They can't reopen it. And like if you were granted and somebody did a fraud review, they can't reopen it unless pursuant to such an investigation, the individual has been convicted by the court of competent jurisdiction of fraud. That's impossible to verify. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. That's nearly impossible to verify. So, I mean, this looks good, but what it appears to be doing is gathering evidence. Who are the usual suspects that are potentially committing fraud? I don't know. And then we're going to do an annual congressional report. Ooh, scary, tantalizing. Reports don't really sway me. But I mean, I guess they're just gathering evidence for subsequent judicial or congressional things. Obviously not in favor of the veteran at all. So this will not be in favor of the veteran. This will be to the detriment of the private DBQ potentially because they're looking for fraud and private DBQs are fraud. So keep that in mind. So I wanted to just point this out to you because this bill right here, this SB 3000, if you want to call your congressman and say, look, it's Mr. Blumenthal who introduced the bill. I need more legislation to support my private DBQs and not stifle them at all. Like that's what I want Blumenthal to understand. I want more stuff. If you want to legitimize the process for private DBQs and make standards that people can follow, that private doctors, not, to include private doctors, but I don't want you shutting down my private doctor because of some arbitrary rule that some random Joe VSR that has no medical background can say that this is fraudulent because this doctor, hear me out now, this doctor's NPI number has a different address on it. Believe me. The fraud. I don't know, guys. I get weirded out by laws that make things harder on veterans. So, and that's what I see this one as. Now, the second one that I've got here, this was introduced on 11/4. And I just want to point out wording because words matter to me, right? Like, I just want to point out this rule. It's going to talk about creating a website where we basically identify illnesses from the toxic exposure when the VA wants to add or remove them. So this act, sure, let's keep going here. It's meant to provide public transparency regarding presumptions of service connection regarding toxic exposures. So you might not see this law as bad. even though these bills are hard to understand. But we're talking about the publication. The secretary shall establish and maintain a publicly accessible website of the Department of Veterans Affairs, a list of conditions and cohorts that the department is considering for the purpose of establishment. Awesome. Thumbs up for establishment, or removing a presumption of service connection based upon toxic exposures. Now, this is where it threw me sideways. Okay. God bless everybody that wrote this, but who's removing things? Why are we removing things? Why are things getting removed? Why are things getting removed, guys? And well, no. It's just we're creating a website. Should we remove something? Why are we removing anything? Why are we creating a website that allows the discussion to have presumptions removed? They're presumptive. It's just true in the face of being true. Why are we creating a bill that creates a website for removing presumptive conditions? This to me is not good. I don't like this. And I don't like this for two reasons. Number one, first and foremost, as a veteran, I don't like the fact that we're removing things. Is there scientific evidence to remove something? I haven't heard anything about that. Why are we giving any kind of channel or communication in order for more public people to start publicly talking about removing presumptive conditions? This stinks a little bit about just giving a public forum to somebody like the Washington Post or Lieutenant Dan to start removing things. Let's not remove things. Why do we want to talk about removing anything? Weirds me out. Now, the second thing that bothers me about this is from the Raider standpoint. Stop foxtrotting with stuff. Okay? It's hard enough for the newer Raiders to understand anything except when you guys start moving stuff around. Okay? You start moving stuff around, you start potentially removing things, adding things, messing up things. It's hard for them to do things accurately when the process is always in flux. Adding things is fine, but subtracting things is always horrible because it makes people's process very, very challenging to get familiar with and comfortable with. It's very annoying. But hi, Sandreb. Cool. It's nice to have you here. You are welcome. But do you guys see why I watch this stuff? So I watch this Legiscan thing quite commonly just to see what is the flavor of the week for Congress. What are they looking at? What is their motivations? And we have one that happened after the Lieutenant Dan's debacle, in which now they want to just put up bills to have, oh, well, let's just not, like, why have the Washington Post have to bend over backwards to explain what we should have taken away from us? Let's have the VA create a formal website in which we can debate about things that we should take away from them. Now, I understand that there is a adding additional things part of that too, but nobody cares about the adding additional things. First and foremost, everybody should care about when they remove things. Is this arbitrary? What's going on? Who makes that determination about removing presumptive conditions? I mean, the Vietnam veterans alone have had it hard enough that we should not just arbitrarily remove things based upon how some guy, Lieutenant Dan, feels about something. That should never be anything that comes to fruition. How one human being feels about something should not be, carte blanche to just remove things. So those are the bills that I pulled out that I kind of wanted to talk about. And let me tell you, that grinded every gear of my body. Now, I'm not a pessimist by nature. Okay. I don't wholeheartedly feel like that bill is negative, but with how arbitrarily that somebody can go, oh, well, let's just create a website to just talk about removing presumptive conditions. We don't talk about removing presumptive conditions. You will pry a presumptive condition out of my cold, dead hand because you're just taking away benefits on the whim of public opinion, and I don't agree. Now, there was something else that I kind of wanted to talk about. Now, the video that I did about the social media raters and whether or not some raters go through your social media, which is 1000% true, because I've had philosophical conversations with them about it and how they shouldn't be doing it and they can't utilize it as evidence. There was something else I wanted to talk about because I had a really good question. And I'm going to put out a video about it, but it's kind of a clickbaity topic that some people might see as clickbaity is, can examiners misrepresent the truth? Who here right now would like me to talk about whether or not VA examiners can misrepresent the truth and how I see it the most often? Would you guys like to hear about that, or would you like me to answer questions? I'll let the chat decide. No, you don't want to hear about it? Okay. All right. So the actual question that I received is, can they lie? Can the examiners lie? Yes. And I think your question was the one that brought it up. Pete. Chris McGee says no. I find it weird that people want to that say no. I'm curious why you would say no. Please, somebody, how they can lie. Because all right, well, Dan, post your question and I'll ask you. Well, I mean, I answer questions in subsequent videos, so I do answer them. I'm sorry, I'm just reading the chat as it flows by. But I mean, so the examiner's the thing, and I've said this in a few videos, right? How can the examiners misrepresent the truth? And they typically do it when, so yes, they do misrepresent the truth a lot of the time. A lot of them will go on their own personal bias. So some examiners don't get the information and it's not their fault. So it'll look like they're lying, but they just didn't get all the evidence. So sometimes it's not their fault, but oftentimes they do. They will overlook buddy statements all the time. This is why a lot of your claims get deferred back. Like, you've seen, and you guys have talked about this, and you guys have said it in a lot of the comments of, hey, look, why are so many claims getting deferred back? Why am I going from step 6 to step 3 to what, I don't know the step process of it. But a lot of the time that the step process gets given back is due to the fact that the examiners will, and you can tell that they're using their internal bias, is when they don't provide a medical rationale. Now, in order for a medical opinion to be sufficient for VA purposes, even by VA examiners, they have to provide a medical rationale that is more than, yeah, I believe this because I believe it, I have a medical license. So oftentimes what you'll see is when you have an even-keeled examiner that use the evidence. They will cite the evidence in their review and say, well, I believe that it's more likely that this is, it's at least as likely as not that this is the cause, evidenced by, in 2024, they had this condition. They had chronic pain that led up to their heart condition up until this point in time, in their medical records. So it's at least as likely as not. But the people that lie, I've had individuals, examiners, try to get somebody's condition unservice connected before. They were doing an increase exam and they're like, I never would have granted this to begin with because there isn't enough evidence. So sometimes you can get what I consider advocate CMP examiners who will review the evidence to try to push their own personal opinion, even when something's service connected. And when they do that, I just ignore them. I don't listen to what they have to say because it's service connected and there's no way that they can call a clear and unmistakable error. So Dan, let me go down here to Dan's stuff. Dan looks like he's got a few questions, and I really want to answer Dan's questions because it seems like we could do a lot of good for Dan tonight. So let me just try to find his questions. But yeah, examiners sometimes misrepresent the truth. The worst way, actually, while I'm looking for Dan's thing, let me tell you the worst way that it's done. And I've seen some of the CMP, the private CMP examiners, like the ones that have the companies and whatnot, they'll do this. I think that his plantar fasciitis was caused by his boots or his ruck marches or whatever. That is the biggest misrepresentation, where the examiner cannot have any kind of opinion on that unless the veteran had actual treatment for their, there it is. Unless the person had treatment for, ruck march induced pain or something like that, or some kind of treatment for their boots, the most misrepresented factoid that an examiner will basically pull out of their fourth point of contact is trying to claim element 2 is satisfied by the veteran's boots or the veteran's ruck marches. It's not something that can be service connected for. You cannot use boots or ruck marches for element 2. And it is frustrating, to say the least. Answering questions add more value and build your channel. Otherwise, watch hours will not grow. My watch hours are just fine, BF. And I do videos specifically on answering the questions because, if I look at my analytics here of my watch hours, I have lifetime watch hours of 74,000 watch hours. So, that's pretty good. Okay, so Dan, here's the question. I was diagnosed with spondyloarthritis, sure, 4 years after regular retirement and awarded 10% VA disability for that condition. Okay, let me find here. In September of this year, I had a quadruple bypass operation that was the result of the service-connected disability. Service-connected that way, or you believe it to be that way, Dan? That's going to be a hard one because, how does your back? Well, let me see here. Was it jeez, I'm gonna have to Google. Dan, you're getting me here. I want to help you so much that I'm going to start Googling here. Spondylosis. Yeah, that's a spinal condition. That's an osteoarthritis spinal condition. So how does that cause your heart? And I'm assuming these two questions are connected to each other. I was told at the time that I would receive a temporary adjustment of 100% and then I would be reevaluated. Maybe. Don't know. Let's go, Dan. Keep going with me here. Okay. Okay. Let me find Dan. I view it as being service connected because I was referred inpatient by the VA direct community care for the bypass operation. Well, that's not. Hmm. I'm going to keep looking here, Dan. You got to give me more than this because you have to, like, the spine, you're going to have a hard time with a medical opinion for the back causing the heart condition. I mean, the back would have to be, I mean, are we talking about the back limited motion caused you to gain weight? The weight gain caused the heart condition? Well, okay, okay. So let me clear something up here. That is a good point, Dan. That is a great point. Okay. So there are two separate things here. If you wander into a VA clinic, VHA, Veterans Health Administration clinic, and you present with a condition that requires you to be immediately transported to a alternative facility for treatment because the healthcare center that you are at does not have the actual capacity to treat you, then the VHA will pay for your treatment for that condition. That is not the same thing as it being service connected. That what you described is a healthcare process that is not, like, they want to make sure that you get the treatment and do not die. If you have a heart attack in the middle, if you have no heart conditions that are service connected and you have a heart attack in the middle of a VA facility that cannot treat you, they will pay for all of your care for the healthcare condition regardless because it medically happened on their facility and they couldn't treat you, so they're going to cover it. That is not the same thing as service connection and for service disability. Okay, that's could be true, but now we're talking about diabetes. So do you have diabetes that's service connected? So if that's the case, then that could be secondary. I've I've been all my current health conditions are related to service connected disability. What's the service connected disability? Is it the spine? Because I'm just going to tell you that uh, I'm going to tell you that if the spine is the only thing that you have, it will be challenging to get all of these conditions service connected. But the fact pattern that you gave me that you had a some kind of myocardial, like some kind of cardio issue, I think, if I'm recalling correctly. And that cardio issue manifested at the VA healthcare facility and they paid for your healthcare. That does not translate over to being service connected for compensation purposes. Yeah, and I mean, rheumatoid arthritis. Are you service connected for rheumatoid arthritis? Because there's different types of like spinal issues. Like you actually have to be diagnosed by the VA with rheumatoid arthritis, the disease process, rheumatoid arthritis, for them to start considering things secondary. Well, the spondyloarthrosis is a form of osteoarthritis, and osteoarthritis is a post traumatic arthritis. It's not the disease one for VA purposes. So, uh, shit. Well, let me find it here. I'm going to look up the M21. because I'm going to show you this thing here. Sorry, Luna. Spondi. What is it? Spondylarthrosis. We're going to take the time on this one, guys. So we're going to take the time, and then I'm going to pull up the M21, and then I want to go with osteoarthritis. Because unfortunately, the way that the VA looks at osteoarthritis is different. So let me pull this up now. Okay. So the spondyloarthrosis, this one right here, let me try to make it bigger. And I'll move your question out of the way so I can see it. So this one right here appears to be, now I'm going to use the same stuff whenever I'm rating, I'm going to look up, is it appears to be kind of a form of osteoarthritis. Talks about the facets, spondyloarthritis, a form of osteoarthritis. Yeah, it's a form of osteoarthritis. And if I go over here to the M21, this is a form of post-traumatic arthritis, which is not a disease process version for VA purposes. Now, Dan, I'm going to agree that probably your doctor disagrees with this, but for VA purposes, it's going to be hard for you to tether secondaries to this as a disease process, especially transitioning from the spinal condition to the heart, like to heart conditions and whatnot. Just keep that in mind. So I know I probably haven't said anything that made you happy, but it's just the way the VA looks at post-traumatic arthritis is weird. So if you're going to file a claim for this, keep in mind that just because you got treatment at the VA itself, it's not like it's going to be an 1151 claim because it's not negligence on their part. They just paid for you to go to a different hospital. So I hope that at least maybe helps you out with something. When the VSO okay. Okay, I'm gonna have a heart condition. Okay, so when the VSO Googled this and the other conditions they filed, they found direct correlation. It's gonna come like the VSO does not know, like they don't have a functional understanding of how the examiners. I mean, you can have secondaries to this condition. I'm not just counting that. But if you go outside of the musculoskeletal body system, it's going to be very challenging to get like cardiovascular conditions secondary to it. I'm just priming you for the potential of it, okay? I'm not going to say no because it's going to come down to the examiner. But the likelihood of having a cardiovascular condition due to a post-traumatic arthritis condition is very low. So, and yeah, I'm hoping for you, Dan. I just want to prime you for the potential that it might not turn out favorable, or that you might have to have the examiner might ask you questions about it, like how are these two things connected in your mind? You need to come up with that, okay? So you need to have that prepared. So let me just move this real quick back here, and I do want to. We did have a couple of things here. So Backwoods Law became a YouTube member. Hey, thank you so much for that. I think I've talked to Backwoods Law on the side, maybe. BF, thank you for your donation. It's much appreciated. I have MRI diagnosis for radiculopathy and SMR. 2 entries that literally says bench press of service member records. Okay. Service medical records. Okay. 2 entries that literally say bench press of heavy weights, causes of costochondritis. Can I use heavy repetition bench press to show onset of radiculopathy? Okay, so number 1, where's your radiculopathy? I'm going to assume upper extremity because we're talking about bench pressing. But if you say that you have radiculopathy, radiculopathy is a term that is associated with the neck. So you have to have a neck injury for you to have radiculopathy typically, based upon the fact pattern that you're presenting to me, BF. So the first point of contention is to come up with a neck diagnosis, neck service connection for you to have radiculopathy secondary. Because radiculopathy, like I said beforehand, is a term for a secondary to a spinal injury. If you had neuropathy, if you had neuritis or neuralgia, that would be a better explanation to just having, that's having neurological conditions that are not associated with a spinal condition, is when you have neuritis, neuropathy, and neuralgia. But radiculopathy means secondary to a actual spinal condition. Your neck is damaged, so that way you have radiculopathy that happens due to that spinal condition. I hope that helps. Okay. Sam Samps has gifted 1 membership. Thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate that. I don't know who got it. I can't tell, but somebody did. And then we've got Chris McGee. Higher level review returned a difference of opinion. At the new exam, she indicated this is just a DBQ without a medical opinion because it's already service connected. Okay. Would the difference of opinion indicate to her that service connection? Can I assume that it's service connected? Wow, this is making my brain hurt. Okay, so we have a difference of opinion. At the new examination, she indicated this is just a DBQ without a medical opinion because it's already service connected. Would the difference of opinion indicate to her service connection? I'm going to say yes, it should. If they believe that it doesn't require a medical opinion and that's already service connected, that might be the difference of opinion. What did they do on this, Chris? Did they sever you? Did they say it wasn't service connected? Yeah. I don't know. I need more information on this. Send me an email. An email that I probably will not get to, but we'll do our best. Okay, so let me see here. So okay, so I'm going to, oh my gosh. So many questions, guys. Now I'm probably going to cut this a little bit short here in probably like 15 or 20 minutes just because I'm curious. Now everybody leave Dan alone. Dan had good questions. It was very, sometimes I get hyper fixated on the very, very interesting scenarios that people provide because I feel like Dan's situation is very complex and he could be potentially underrated, not rated, or denied if he doesn't have a functional working understanding of the kind of what's going on. Because if it's complex to me, then it's going to be deeply complex to the VSR and rater that review it, and they might not understand what Dan is talking about. Thank you for that, Jarhead. I'm kind of going out of order, but let's go with this. Living overseas and submitting DBQ from foreign specialist psychiatrist for mental health secondary to tinnitus, concerned VA will not accept if psychiatrist isn't USA certified. There's a process for that. They definitely have to be a psychiatrist And I think I went over the requirements in one of my videos for that, but they definitely have to be, there's a certain criteria for it. So there is potential for being concerned, but what'll happen is typically if your provider doesn't meet criteria, then what'll happen is they'll send you to a qualified person in country that has been vetted, and then you'll go to them. And then I would just take my evidence from my regional provider that did my DBQ with me to the examination and, you know, kind of do that. I don't know if that makes sense. So I just want to, we're kind of still talking about Dan's thing here, but if he has a thoracic injury, it can affect the heart. I mean, technically, anything can technically affect the heart, but you better come with some kind of like honest, it's going to take a lot of science, right? Like it's going to take a lot of science to get you there. I mean, yeah, maybe T2, maybe if it caused, but it would have to like it would have to be a very, 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 very severe, not to the point that they granted him 10% even. Like that's the okay, my Raider brain. Like if you guys want to understand my Raider brain, and you can disagree with me on this, but the way somebody is rated is telling. So if and it's not necessarily telling in a good way. So if he was rated 40% with radiculopathy on board, upper extremity, sure, it's severe. It's very severe. But if he's at 10% without radiculopathy, then it's harder for me to rationalize medically that the condition could be severe enough to cause a heart issue. Does that make sense? And I mean, I get it. I'm tracking, right? But when we're looking at VA disability, this is the way a lot of raters review things. They review it based upon, like, if you tell me that you have chronic pain and your chronic pain causes you mental health, if the only thing that you have is 10% for your knee, that's not persuasive, right? I want to see more. Like, if you have 40% for your knee and you say you have chronic pain, okay, we're talking now. I can rationalize that. I can rationalize that the 40%, shows it. But that's the way the VA examiners also look at it. They look at how, like, so you can bend over and touch your toes potentially. Because that's what the 10% would mean, is that you could technically bend over and touch your toes. So for your spinal condition. So if you can bend over and touch your toes, then your spinal condition technically wouldn't be that bad. And I'm not saying anything about Dan's situation. I'm just talking about how um, the way that the VA raters kind of use the service connected percentages to determine the severity of the condition, to see if something's medically significant enough to where um, could that secondary be true. Keep in mind that bill that I just showed you guys is where fraud is going to be reviewed by people without a medical background. Like, I technically have a medical background. I was a radiology tech. What does that get me? I don't know. Just the fact that I was a radiology tech and I've seen bones and I've taken x-rays. It doesn't make me an expert in any way, shape, or form. But I'm trying to rationalize the actual, like, how cardio, like, I could see the vagus nerve causing issues with the heart, but how is the spine interacting with the vagus nerve? I don't know. But that's a speculation that as a rater I can't have, right? That's me using my old hat. That's me using internal bias from a prior thing that I would know. Um, it it wouldn't, right? And this is why, like, MCM, this is where, like, nobody should be making this determination. What they should do is they should say, okay, does the veteran have a current diagnosis of the heart condition? They do. Okay, how did they claim it? They claimed it secondary to the T spine. Fair enough. or the L spine, whichever one, the thoracic lumbar spine. Okay, is the thoracic lumbar spine service connected? Yes, it is. Okay, get them an exam. And then the rater is going to let the examiner cook. And then they're going to let them just say what they're going to say. And they're going to take the examiner's word at it. Now, that's if they get a VA examiner. However, the same is not true if they do a private DBQ for this, because if they do a private DBQ, then that rater is going to be sitting there like I was going, how in the heck are these two things connected to each other? I need you to show it to me and break it down Barney style as to how the spine can cause the heart to have issues, because the node of His, things like that. Like there's certain things where if you had a quadruple bypass, what does that have to do with your spine? And I need you to explain it to me, unfortunately. Yes, I know. Like George, I know that the vagus nerve can affect the heart. I get that, but I'm like, how did the spine interact? And unfortunately, this is sometimes like, and Dan, I'm really sorry. I'm not picking on you or anything. We're using this is kind of a TED Talk situation where we're kind of using your circumstances to better understand how the VSRs and raters understand things, and they don't. You are coming with a very complex set of secondaries here that are outside of the norm. So whenever you have something that's outside of the normal, the onus is on you to bring the scientific evidence as to how they're connected to each other. Because even I myself, right? I was a combat medic, I was a radiology tech, I was a lot of things. And if I'm struggling to figure out how they're connected with each other, then average raters who have no medical background will definitely struggle in this. Yeah. And how rheumatoid arthritis, even, like, you have a good point here. And I'm not saying that it's wrong or anything like that. I'm just saying that this is a good example of why you're going to need to present your evidence in a very concise way, a very clear way, and how you're going to, present it as being a causal way. So, that's a good question. I gotta find it, see if Dan gave any more questions down here, because I'm trying not to I'm trying, like, and I know, like, look, Dan, that's all we can do is look, as veterans, that's all we can do is we can rely on like what the VSO told you, which um take that with a grain of salt and figure out what the doctors are going to tell you, because this is going to come down to a medical doctor making that determination, not a VSO. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of VSOs do not. Okay, Dan has some more statements, dear, and we're gonna get to it. Tonight's episode is about Dan, and I'm happy it is, because I want to help Dan. I'm trying to find Dan's question, and it's waiting to come up. There we go. Okay, my condition isn't only spine related. In fact, it manifests itself and has for 20 years on my connective tissue and the pain that arises from it. Okay, that makes sense. And I have been treated with medicines for 20 plus years. Okay. So, but the only thing that you currently have service connected is the spine. So, when we talk about theory, at least that's what I understand. And you're going to, please correct me if I'm wrong on that, Dan. It sounded like you were only service connected for the spine at like 10%. And if I'm wrong about that, I do apologize. But if you're only service connected for the spine, then one of the problems that I'm going to see is that how you would claim those other things. So you would have a limit on what theories could apply. The most, secondary potentially, obviously, 38 CFR 3.309A is one that's kind of out there, depending on when you got diagnosed. If you were diagnosed within 1 year of your release from active duty, then that would be cool. And then we would. Well, the problem is how the VA views it, the VBA. Uh, the VBA, you would have to have your condition service connected as a primary. Do you have the rheumatoid arthritis service connected? Because when we cross into things, in fact, treatment I've received has not. Okay. Well, I mean, I get that. But what I'm saying is that treatment at the VHA does not translate over to service connection at the VBA very well. And that's one of the fundamental problems with the VA system for compensation is that, like, how many of us have, like, take mental health for example. You can have a diagnosis in the VHA that doesn't match what you were service connected for in the VBA. It's very weird. Very weird. Yeah. I know, I get that. But what we're talking about is they have to be connected to service somehow. So they either are going to be direct, they're going to be secondary, or potentially 38 CFR 3.309A or Terra. But they will have to be service connected. I thought it was 10% for the spine currently. No, I'm fine, Dan. I find this very interesting. And it's cool. Like, yeah, if you want to go through the VSOs, that's perfectly fine. I'm the way that you were trying to service connect it kind of caught me a little weird. But um yeah, it's fine if you want to go through the VSOs. I'm just telling you that might be a little bit challenging on when it's time to service connect them. Like what theories would apply. Um but anyway, let's go down here for T Bird MBA. The VA just decided one of my claimed issues was not service related, saying no event occurred. I had a broken leg and cellulitis and then medically dropped from ranger school. I don't have the med records, just assignment orders. I mean, if you have a broken leg, someone has a medical record somewhere. That is going to be true. So I would find the broken leg because the broken leg itself will, I mean, that'll be service connected as long as you got an x ray in service. Um, so yeah. So I would look for those records. I would try to find those records, at least get the dates and times of it. Um, so narcolepsy. Joey, narcolepsy. So you have seizures then, or is it narcolepsy is rated under epilepsy? So let me find narcolepsy here. So epilepsy, petite mal. Petite mal. Hear me click. I'm clicking and a clacking. So you have to have the seizures for the epilepsy, unfortunately. And you have 80%. So you're averaging at least one major seizure in 3 months over the last year, or more than 10 minor seizures weekly. Is that true, Joe? Well, hold on. Okay. So you got the minor seizures. Okay. Yeah, because whenever I'm looking at this, this is what comes up. So unfortunately, yeah, narcolepsy doesn't get its own rating decision, so it's under the petite mal. So then we go here, and then we go here, and then. But yeah, I mean, if you have more than 10 minor seizures weekly, then yeah, you would count for the 80%. Yeah. So just make sure that your doctors are saying this. Okay, because that's what the VA examiners are going to want to see is they're going to want to see the doctors are tracking this. They're tracking 10 minor seizures weekly on average. So when continuous medication is shown in the presence of major minor rate predominantly type, there will be no distinction between general and nocturnal. Okay, cool. So yeah, so just do yourself a favor, have your doctors report this in your records and make sure that the records are given narcolepsy is in attendance because I'm pretty sure they can't drive. Okay. Aid in attendance. Well, it it depends. Aid and attendance are for activities for daily living. So it would, yeah, no, I know, but you have to show your activities for daily living that you have to have another human being do. So it'll be hard um, to show that. So now that we're completely, and I'd like to thank you, Dan, for entertaining my questions and whatnot. You didn't take me down a rabbit hole or anything like that. I was just very curious about it. So thank you for sharing your story with me. I appreciate it. Um, so the problem with cellulitis, though, is that cellulitis can be acute or transitory. You have to have a permanent disability that comes from it, from the third spacing of the cell tissue. So cellulitis typically doesn't get to become a chronic permanent disability. It's something that resolves afterwards. So just be careful of that. A lot of people can get frustrated because they don't get rated for cellulitis. Now, whenever you do, you can get the post-phlebitic. Let me see here. What if a QTC examiner lied on your DBQ, such as telling that you are not prescribed medication to manage your disability, does not give you adequate exam, and therefore the VA denied the claim? Okay, so this is one of the things that I was talking about whenever I was kind of rambling into, do CMP examiners lie? Yes, they do. But is it a lie based upon they didn't have the evidence put before them, or did they actively choose to say that you aren't on you aren't on the prescribed medicine? So, oh, I hate that question, Thomas. That is you're hitting me with the I hate the fatty liver. Okay. So, okay. Got to stay focused here. Okay. So, what you would do is I would do a higher level review and go, "Hey, look, I at least didn't get in my rating decision. They didn't talk about I'm clearly diagnosed. I'm clearly on medication that were of record at the time. The examiner didn't discount it, and I haven't been miraculously healed. So, um, can I please go to a different examiner who can read? I mean, be nicer than that. Please be nicer than that. Oh, I know they had all the evidence, but the problem is, did the examiner get all the evidence? Because the exam request, they are only given access to what the VA VSR tells them they can have access to. So sometimes they do not have access. Sure, Daniel, I can talk about favorable findings. So, but that's the thing that I would do, um, is I would do a higher level review and just say, hey, look, what can I get a different examiner because I clearly had a diagnosis and they said I didn't. So that would be something that I would do. Yes, sometimes. Sometimes we can invite. So what'll happen is on your code sheet note, sometimes we can tell the authorizer, "Hey, look, can you invite a claim for this? But typically, the rater, when they do that, it's to invite something that has a high chance of success that wasn't part of this claim. So if it's like, you know, yeah, but yes, they can do that. And that's the way, unfortunately, Jarhead, that's the way it is with most things, is it depends on who you get before. It doesn't matter about your evidence. It matters about the persuasiveness and bias of the examiner that you get. I mean, I'm not making that up. That's true. Could you talk a bit about favorable findings and how to use in your favor? VA denied hand pain, but favorable finding says I have arthritis and tendonitis. Okay. So every single theory for service connection has an element to it, has multiple elements, 3 to be specific. Element 1 is always a current symptom or current diagnosis. So you have that favorable finding. You have element 1 of a current diagnosis of arthritis and tendonitis in one of your fingers. Element 2 changes depending on what theory for service connection you're talking about. So if you're talking about direct service, then you would need to show some kind of in-service complaint, injury, diagnosis, or event related to your hand. Now, in order to be granted under direct, you would have to produce that, which is hard because the VA should have all of your service treatment records. So the direct theory is probably that door is shut because you either do have it or you don't have it. Element 3 would be if you did have element 1 and you had element 2, then element 3 would be the doctor medically saying that element 2 and element 1 are related to each other. They're connected, more likely than not. So, one of the things that you use favorable findings for is to figure out, okay, what does the VA concede that I have? And by knowing this, you can potentially pivot to other theories that are, potentially able to be granted. So for the hand specifically, you have direct, secondary, and you have arthritis though. So you have direct and secondary as the two different theories that technically you could be applied to. Yeah, it's pretty much a crapshoot. Lifestyle changes, TV. Love your channel, by the way. So, what could your hand be caused by? Well, if you had, like, let's say you had knee issues and you fell down and you hit and you braced yourself with your hand and you ended up hurting your hand, that then your claim could, your hand condition could be secondary to your knee, let's say. So there's different avenues for it. So that's what the favorable findings are meant to tell you is which of the elements have been conceded in your favor for the theories that you've claimed. So going by direct, in order to appeal this, for the direct theory, you would have to produce some in-service event and then have a doctor find that, the in-service event and the current diagnosis are related to each other. Actually, there is one more theory that could apply, depending on when you were diagnosed. If your arthritis was diagnosed within 1 year from your release from active duty, then technically it would be presumptive under 38 CFR 3.309A. So there is that potential also. So you have direct, secondary, and you have 3.309A as potential theories. But that's basically how you do favorable findings. You have to think about them like you need all three elements in order to grant. If you're missing one element, then we can't grant. So you figure out which elements you're missing, and then you have to add evidence to support it. Now, if you can't add evidence to support it, then you pivot to something else and you kind of, use a different theory that's open to you. One of the main things that I really wish the VA would work on is for each of these particular entries in the 38 CFR Part 4, I wish that they would list all the potential theories for service connection that could technically be granted if your fact pattern was true. So, like, let me go to 8100 here. So that's migraines, right? I wish that they would give the VSOs, the raters even, a fact pattern as to what specifically this could be granted for. What do I mean by that? Well, migraines can technically be granted under direct theory, aggravation theory, 1151 theory, the secondary theory, 38 CFR 3.317 MUCME. It can also be granted under 38 CFR 3.309A, and it can be granted under TERA. Those are all technically the theories that could apply to this. But not everybody knows because these aren't consistent throughout. A convulsive tic, right, might be 1151, direct, secondary, TERA, but it couldn't be 38 CFR 3.317 MUCME because you can actually have an etiology for this. This could be genetic. This could be due to something else. So technically that theory wouldn't apply. I know I'm getting kind of nerdlinger on you guys, so I'm sorry about that. Oh, challenge accepted. I want to see this. You understand that mental health cannot pyramid. If a veteran is service connected with one mental health, I don't know what we're talking about here. Mental health cannot pyramid. That's not necessarily true. The only mental health that cannot pyramid is eating disorders and mental health. Those two forms, like anything else. So if I go here to 9411 for post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is a list of all the diagnostic codes. Technically, all of these things have to be rated together. You cannot separately grant these things. They all have to be combined together because that would be pyramiding if you granted them separately. Now, the only thing that can be granted separately in order to not pyramid is for eating disorders. Eating disorders have their own separate, these two, anorexia and bulimia. These two can be rated separately. That would not be pyramiding. If you rated major depressive disorder, 34, 9434, and you rated unspecified anxiety disorder separately, that would be pyramiding, and that would be against the rules. Pyramiding typically refers to separately granting things, the same symptoms separately, and it's prohibited. So yeah, you can technically have some mental health disorders like these eating disorders separately granted. So I hope that helps with that. I don't know if I even addressed your question, Douglas. I'm sorry if I didn't. Ken, saw your video on the more favorable months to submit your claim. Did the government shut down even though it's now over? Yeah, it did have an impact on this. A lot of people were more worried about putting food on their table than they were for actually, not top sheeting. So it came down to the individual and how prepared they were and how thrifty they were with their money. But yeah, there was a lot of people that were very distracted. And when you have distracted people, it made it to where they couldn't, focus. Sometimes like me, sometimes whenever I'm answering questions and I kind of squirrel on things. This is a good question too. Okay. So Air Force girl, I'm going to answer this. If So obviously something's been previously denied, right? It depends on what element was denied. If you were denied because you have no diagnosis and you submit new lay statements talking about your symptoms, no, that's not new and relevant evidence because the doctor said you don't have a diagnosis. In order to fight that, you would need a new diagnosis. If element, and that's element one. So if element two, the in service event or whatever it was the reason that, well, that we're trying to connect to service somehow, be it through a primary disability for the secondary theory, Tara, you're trying to claim that you have Tara and they said you don't have Tara, then that statement, your lay statements might help with that, with element two, because you might say, well, hey, look, I'm trying to, I know that you guys said I didn't have Tara beforehand, but I'm going to claim it due to my MOS duties of being a radiology tech and being exposed to radiation. That lay statement would help you in that specific fact pattern just prove a matter at issue for element two for Tara by identifying new and relevant Tara. Now, the third element is the connection between the two. If you were only denied because you were missing a medical nexus due to chronicity, like let's say that they said that, well, it's been 20 years since you got out of service. Now, I admit that you had migraines in service. However, you didn't have any kind of treatment or complaints of migraines until 20 years afterwards. So, a credible lay statement for element three would be filling in that gap. Hey, look, I've got, here's my credible lay statement that says, yes, I did have it, but I treated it over the counter. I did this, this, and this. Here's some buddy statements with the proper evidence to show that they were in my life at that time, saying that I did, in fact, had migraines. Here's some evidence also from my employer saying, them getting on me about my migraines and taking leave. Here's some more of that evidence. That lay statement would be probative for chronicity issues. So that is important too. The only time that we have issues, right, is when the doctor says you don't have a diagnosis. Your lay statement cannot override that doctor. That's one of the big problems that people don't understand about lay statements. Medical articles will always be considered new evidence as long as they weren't submitted with a prior claim. So I hope that answered your question, Air Force girl. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of long winded. Now, let me go down here. I'm trying to see here. I don't think I answered this. Oh, I did answer this one. Yeah. And then GC Jarhead, thank you for the 5 memberships. Wow. Congratulations to those who got them. I have no control over that. It just auto does it. So that's pretty cool. I don't. Okay, wait. I have a provide auth to disclose information from private doctor hospital. I have 4 secondary claims, CMP tomorrow. I just saw the request. Look, and then it says, I was diagnosed with IBS 40 years ago. The doctor is dead. I'm 71. Just put their name in there. Give them the information. They will determine that the person's dead, and it'll just work itself out. Unfortunately, you always want to be compliant with the request, even though you can't satisfy the request because it's obviously an unreasonable request. The doctor clearly is dead, but you just want to make sure that you're doing it. And thank you, GC Jarhead, for doing that. And I'm about done. Okay, so can I create a list of theories for you guys? Yes, I can. And yes, I will. I will do that. I have been trying to create a list of theories for each of these conditions. But let me tell you, that is a labor of frustration. Because, and let me try to go here and see if I can find it even. I'm looking into some of my evidence to try to see if I can find it on my desktop. and I can't find it. But there are actually like I've honestly tried to go through the 38 CFR Part 4 and attribute in a spreadsheet every single theory that could apply to every single thing. I spent weeks on it and I got halfway done with it. So it's kind of scary. Um, just because, and I had to research a lot of them because sometimes these things do not like. How many times have I ever granted the neurosa, the anorexia? I haven't really. Ken, the Wounded Warrior Access Act requires that the VBA fulfills C-file requests within 120 days. If you don't receive records after 120 days, what would you recommend doing? Uh, I have no recommendations because there's things that should happen and then the things that really happen, right? Yeah, and I do have to go here in a few minutes, but um, yeah, the autocorrect. And I'm sorry, like, especially to Dan, I put your stuff on blast, and I'm sorry for that. But I am very interested in it. Be careful with Google. Be careful with the way Google works and the way things are connected medically might not be the same, even in the civilian world. But the VA has really weird ways that they connect things. And just, I'm trying to just set you up to not be disappointed, Dan. Now, Roger. I attempted to gift the guy that asked you for a gifted membership on his birthday. In that video, I also left another 3 more. Maybe I did it wrong. It just randomly assigns it to people, unfortunately. Um, yeah, and I watch out for AI. So let me finish this thought. But you didn't do wrong. You did a very nice thing, Roger. And it's just randomly, it just whoever. The one thing that you can do is say, "Hey, stick around to where you and I are the last ones on the stream," and then gift a membership to them. Like that's about all you could do. But yeah, thank you for gifting that. By the way, I appreciate it. Now, but this is the main point that I'm talking about. AI, you gotta watch out for AI. It will let you down because think about it this way: how many times have you guys? Um, how many times have you guys been told something on YouTube? Hey, look, your tinnitus can get you to 100%. And it's not true, right? It's just clickbaity nonsense. Sometimes AI is like that, where it doesn't get the nuance of how things are interconnected with each other because of how disconjointed the CFRs and the M21-1 are. It's very hard for AI specifically and Google more so, but AI specifically, for it to get things right. It's very challenging. Um, Maybe I do need a website. I don't know. Like that's a good point. Maybe do need a website. I was thinking about something. I'm kind of in the back half of this, so the questions we'll answer the questions in future videos. But I was thinking to myself, I was like, I had a dream that uh, the Craig team offered me a job to be the new Combat Craig spokesperson, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, no, no, thank you. I don't know if I could do that." I just thought it was funny. I was having a dream about that, but you just go onto my website, and there's if you go to let me find my website thing here. If you want to, you don't have to be a member, by the way. But if you just go to here, let me copy and paste in the chat. Yeah, I know. Watch the stairs is too soon. Army Gen Mech too soon. Shame, shame. Yeah, that's It's a little scary. So you just go to there and click onto membership, and then it'll have you. You don't have to do it though. I mean, I'm thankful for everybody that does it, but you don't have to. It just helps me, support the channel, get software, which I'm going to have to get new editing software because the was it StreamYard doesn't do the I like the closed captions, and I would do my edit cuts based upon the closed captions, and they don't do it anymore. It kind of sucks. But yeah, if you want to, you're more than welcome to. Just go on there and just yeah, and it'll be a membership section, and you can donate. There's a VSR level and a Raider level. You do you. You don't have to though. But other than that, what I'm going to be doing next week. So I'm going to be putting out more videos next week. These are I'm probably gonna try, and don't hold me to anything on this, but I'm gonna try to potentially do the knee next week. I'm going to do just more how is it rated videos. I'm gonna put out answering the missed questions that I hadn't gotten to. I'm gonna put out more of those. I'm going to be talking, just putting out videos like that. And I am going to be searching for whenever they put out the updates on the M21 manual. If they do that anytime soon, then I'm going to be doing those. I'm going to show you right here what I'm talking about. So if you go to the M21 manual, and you go to view VA changes by date, and you go here to 2025, I'm looking for whenever October and November pop off. I'm going to be doing videos on that, and I'm going to be researching any of these changes that happen whenever they get put in. They haven't been put in yet, so maybe need to look at getting a more streamlined comms setup. I could have let you know about your audio issue quick. Yeah, I know that. I was away. No, I wait till 90 days. 90 days after the shutdown. 90 days after the shutdown. And even then, anybody that went to affiliates during the time period that they're calling those errors, what's going to happen with the Philadelphia thing is they're going to assign a regional office other than Philadelphia to review all the claims that were rated during that time, possibly authorized by that one person, that one authorizer. They're going to review all those claims, and then they're going to look for clear and unmistakable errors. So that particular review during the whatever time period it was, like to 2022, that particular thing's happening regardless. No one is safe. It's just going to get reviewed, and they're going to find what they find. So every single claim will be under scrutiny. That's the way it works. We did it with there was a big push for that. My regional office was involved there was an OIG review that they found that for hip and knee replacements, they had changed the year convalescence that was given down to 4 months plus an additional month. And they made us review all claims that were done within a certain period of time because they weren't done right. So we had to do it. So I know that they'll do that for Philadelphia too, because that's what they did for that big push. So every RO handles TBI claims in SMC, John. It's just SMEs, subject matter experts at those particular places, do the reviews. So that's what happens. Anyway, I have to go, guys. Family are knocking at the door. So thank you for spending your time, your hard-earned time, and watching, listening, commenting, and participating. I appreciate you guys. So that's about all I got for you tonight before the family lays hands on me. I will talk to you. We'll have another stream on Saturday coming up, and then just watch for videos. Thank you all for spending your time. Have a wonderful night. Raider out.